Hi everyone, welcome to Studio Jake. I am back this evening, and this is really great because you have a Studio Jake double feature. I had Samantha Sullivan on earlier to talk about conservative books that all young people who are interested in conservatism to read. Live show. And again, if you hear my dog barking or the pitter patter of his paws, please ignore. It's live. My wife's out of town, so there's no one really to wrangle him. But we have right now Stefanie Nicholas, who is. I mean, when I first met her, she was Mac Williams. Now she's Nicholas, so it's all very fun. But
he almost did it wrong.
I did almost say it wrong, and I got it in time. But she's here with me today. We're having a part 2 of a discussion we had with Rosemary Duar, where we talked about celebrity worship, why it's a problem, especially in America and Canada. And so I brought one of my favorite Canadians on, Stefanie Nicholas, who writes for the Human Defense Initiative. Is that correct?
Human Defense Initiative. Yeah, that's right.
And she's also an editor for Halsey News. So, Stefanie, welcome back. I'm so happy to have you back.
Thank you so much for having me back. I think it's like my 3rd time on.
This is your 3rd time. She's one of my all-star guests. Once they come on more than 3, you're a more all-star.
And I'm excited because we get to talk about, I've been behind on the politics for a while, in case anyone hasn't noticed. So I'm like, good, I can talk about this kind of stuff from like a Christian perspective. Someone who's gonna,
exactly. Awesome. And me and Stefanie have had very spirited debates on Twitter. But she and I want you to know, off Twitter and on Twitter, we are very good friends. We talk often with each other. We do have debates, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with having a debate. I have no animus toward her, and hopefully she has none toward me.
I always see people like defending my honor and my mentions because like Jake and I are both very like, we get to the logic of it. We're like, no, like that's what that verse in the Bible says. You're wrong. And people see us talking, and I think people are thinking that we must be like fighting. And obviously if you see us talk on camera, that's totally not the case. Love Jake, love his faith, and fire for God. And yeah, thank you.
And that is absolutely true. Stefanie is just as on fire for Jesus as I am. No ifs, ands, or buts, period. So I'm very excited to have her on to talk about this. So we have had this spike in the West, like I said, especially in America and Canada, where we want to just worship these celebrities that come out. And we do it as Christians too. I mean, how many, every time Kevin Sorbo tweets, I mean, the Christian mentions, and don't get me wrong, Kevin Sorbo is a fantastic actor. I've seen lots of his stuff. He's a good actor. I know he's been in some crummy movies. What actor hasn't? Ishtar with Dustin Hoffman, anyone? So we're here to talk about why do we gravitate to these large personalities? I mean, I roll my eyes every time I see a Christian tweet out a Bono quote. So I'm like, he'll tweet something that's mildly Christian, and then all the Christians go nuts and they buy all their YouTube albums on iTunes. But then he supports abortion, then he supports high taxes, and where do we stand as Christians? Like, how should we look at these celebrities, because they are out there, they are more famous. I only have 143 subscribers on this YouTube channel. And, Bono is out there. Kevin Sorbo's out there. Kirk Cameron, poor guy. All these people are out there, and they're doing their best. So why do you think we gravitate to where it almost becomes a all or nothing with these celebrities?
I think it's really interesting that just how it's sort of evolved, right? Because I remember that, it's not as though celebrity kind of worship culture is new. It's just I find the way we're worshiping celebrities now has really changed, though, since even when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, we would look at celebrities and it would kind of be a thing of, look how pretty they are and their nice clothes and how rich they are. And now I think largely because of social media and because a lot of people have the ability to express their views so publicly, and that anybody can kind of, get on a camera and have a YouTube show or, get a Twitter account and start speaking their opinions. And I think in a way that's what we value. So when we see celebrities who are doing that, when we see them just kind of putting forth their ideas, we tend to naturally kind of idolize them in that way, the same way that we would have a decade ago for their, endorsed beauty products. And I think it's really interesting to watch, because part of me is like, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe people are getting more intellectual and they want to talk about like politics and religion. But it's really just a sign of the virtue signaling culture, for just one example. And obviously conservatives do this too, as you said, right. That it's like those ideas, certain ideas have kind of become the social currency, even more than like materialistic things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's really odd because like whenever, like I said, whenever a celebrity, like I know that Jim Caviezel, he's very vocal about his faith. And then Denzel Washington, he's also very vocal about his faith. But you look at the difference between these two men. They're both powerhouse actors. As Denzel Washington has kind of graduated into directing. We see Jim Caviezel exploring other projects. He's about to be in a sequel into The Passion of the Christ, which I think is fantastic. I'm excited to see it. And when Jim Caviezel is ostracized, Denzel Washington is not. In fact, Denzel Washington, he recently was asked about, you know, African-American families and how they can move forward. And he said, hey, it starts in the home. Jim Caviezel has said the exact same thing. And it's like, about families and what it's, and so why do you think that certain celebrities get ostracized? Again, kind of like Kevin Sorbo, who's a fantastic actor, but he's kind of been regulated to just these sometimes good, sometimes not so good, hokey Christian films. Why do you think one and not the other?
I think that's interesting too, that this kind of whole thing of the privilege hierarchy and the kind of intersectional insanity, right? Like it's perfectly okay for, you know, it's one thing for the black guy to say this, but if the white guy says the same thing, then suddenly it's a problem. It's like our whole culture has really gone insane with this stuff. I feel like it kind of started with the left, but now it's kind of pervading everything, where we're kind of looking at everything in terms of these different identities and how all these different things intersect with each other. It's like ideas are the kind of new currency in the worst way possible. And I think we're kind of applying it even to celebrities, like who has the right idea. It's not just about, wow, who is actually, you know, logically correct. It's about who is saying it in the way that is palatable to other people. And it just kind of disturbs me because I see it really on all sides. There really is no rhyme or reason to it. As you said, it seems to me a lot of the time to be super arbitrary. And I struggle to think through it but I guess when you get in the mindset that the broader kind of public has, where a person's ideas are directly related to who they are instead of what the ideas are, I guess it kind of makes sense that we see those patterns emerge, but it doesn't make sense to me on the right so much.
I know, and because the right has so long has fought identity politics, and I really feel like, you know, the rise kind of the alt-right, which is really just the left. I think that's a problem with them. You know, we see this identity politics start to play in, and just as far as faith goes, you know, like one time, this is always hilarious. Have you ever heard the quote, "I don't have a problem with your Christ, I have a problem with your Christians"? That quote has Christians been,
like your Christ.
Right, exactly. That quote has been attributed to Abraham Lincoln, Bono, the Dalai Lama, and
I always heard the Dalai Lama.
See, I've heard Abraham Lincoln. I've heard Bono. I think once it got so crazy, people started putting Michael Scott from The Office as the quote. But I also kind of roll my eyes at that because I'm like, okay, so
it wasn't obvious. It says it's fake, apparently.
Yeah. I think maybe someone did say it at one time, but I'm also kind of like, well, if Abraham Lincoln said it, he wasn't a fan of organized religion, but he was still a Christian. So, you know, what difference does it make? If Bono said it, well, that just proves he's not a Christian. So why are we sharing his quotes? And then if the Dalai Lama said it, well, Hinduism is one of the biggest persecutors of Christians in Asia. So, you know, it's kind of like, but I guess it goes back to like, we feel like we even have to, there's like this almost, I hate to say this, but there's almost like this, there's this woe is me when it comes to Christianity. So like if if Ewan McGregor, he goes on, was it Are you
still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
All right, hold on. I don't know what just happened. My computer, this is the first time my Mac that I love so much has ever frozen. It just froze. I couldn't hear you or see anything. So I was like, Yep. Anyways, I'm so sorry. What were you?
Well, I was saying that, you know, these critics of Christianity, and we even saw it when Ian McGregor, I can't remember if he went on Fallon or Kimmel, but he goes on one of the Jimmys, and after Beauty and the Beast came out, and he just mocks Christians for the reaction that one of the characters was going to be a homosexual. And I'm like, that's Disney's prerogative. We can see the movie or not with our dollars, however we want to do it. But he just mocks Christians. And I saw some of my Christian friends sharing this, and they're like, oh, we need to be more loving. Ewan McGregor is calling us out. And I'm like, what? What? He just sat there and mocked Christ live on TV. And I'm curious your reaction to that. Like, why do we have this woe is me mentality where we're like, every time some arbitrary celebrity criticizes us, we're sharing it like, oh, they're so right. Oh, they're more right than my pastor or priest. You know, why do you think that is?
I think it's because we have a very kind of I think it's a really deep problem in our society. We have a really misplaced idea of what it means to be compassionate. I think we have this idea that our entire existence is, we've really picked up the secular kind of world's ideas of our entire existence being about making us happy right here, right now, instead of doing what makes us holier and what is actually good for our souls and not just our immediate needs, right? So we become really spoiled and really unable to accept suffering and accept things being difficult. So I think when we see that kind of calling out, it kind of feeds into that. Like we have this, I tweet about this all the time, like this, we have this aversion to calling ourselves to more, and even more so to calling other people to more. It's like impossible for us to boldly just be like, no, like sometimes you have to do things that are hard, right? Like just that. And to me, like whatever the sub issue is, whether it's homosexuality or abortion or feminism or whatever, it all kind of comes down to this bizarre kind of idol of Christ as a person who just allowed people to stay where they were. And what it actually was is Christ, he did go to the sinners and he did love them, and he did show them kindness and forgiveness and mercy, but he called them to more, like constantly. Like his message was to go and sin no more and to repent and to be better. Like I think videos, like we have that tendency, we're stopping at the point when Christ is just loving on people. And that's a good start. Like it really is a good start. You obviously want to love people, and you can't be the kind of person that, you know, isn't willing to start where people are. I mean, if it was, I wouldn't be here because I wasn't even a Christian, you know? So, but we have to be like, so good for you for calling that out, because I think that next step is missing. And I think it's because of our really spoiled culture that cannot tolerate having to do anything difficult.
Yeah, I think it's also like you're saying, all comes down to false humility. So I'm sharing this, and I'm kind of punishing myself and other Christians because I shared Ewan McGregor mocking Christ on a late night show. But one other thing in this regard is I feel is there's also the reverse effect, where Christians have this aversion to all things Christian media. And granted, there's Christian media out there, movies, bands, whatever, that are awful. You know, they're terrible. But you know, being honest here. But then I also feel like we're letting the perfect get in the way of the good at times. Sure. So I get made fun of this all the time, but I really enjoyed God's Not Dead 1 and 2. I like Do You Believe? And I think those films were good, and I'm not saying that they were fantastic and they deserved an Academy Award, but I thought they were that they really called out Christians when it came to faith and standing up for your faith. So why do you think? And you may disagree with those movies in particular, but I'm also.
But I know the style of the movie, and I generally, even before my conversion, I genuinely had a soft spot in my heart for kind of corny Christian movies. So there you go. Maybe on me.
Well, there it is. Well, and so why do you think that is, that we want to run to the reverse right away? So we're okay when Bono and Ewan McGregor and whoever calls us out, and we go to see their movies, which, you know, like, you know, not all their movies are wholesome and certainly not family friendly, which is fine. You know, whatever a Holy Spirit convicts you, I guess. But on the other hand, then we don't want to support Christians who are out there and trying to do the right thing, who are trying to push media out there that brings these principles. Why do you think we support, I don't want to say our enemies, but the opposition in media, but not those who are trying to move forward in media. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it does, again, kind of come down to our kind of secularization of Christianity. We've kind of bought this idea that, again, it really comes down to my core thing, that it all really comes down to our inability to suffer and our inability to do difficult things. Because I think we have this idea as Christians that we will be more effective as Christians if we make being a Christian so easy. If you make being a Christian so easy that it's completely indistinguishable from the secular world, then we think everyone's gonna be Christian, when of course that is not the case. Because then, if you invest, like, you know what it's like to invest and to pray and to go to church and to learn and to read the Bible and do all these things, you have that investment in your faith. It makes your faith stronger when you call yourself to do more for God. And when you start doing that, you find it a lot easier to go to those things and to want to support the good things. Where I think for those people that have that mindset, and again, sometimes I think it is coming from a good place, just a really misguided one, they kind of see that as, oh, well, those movies are very Christian. Maybe I'll just be a Christian and not really bother with that. It's too Christian. It's kind of corny. Like, maybe, I'm just going to kind of go to what the main culture has. And like you said, I'm not one of those people that's like an absolutist, like, oh, I'm never going to watch a movie that has like a swear word in it. But, I like look at like having my son and stuff. I'm like, no, as he grows up, like, I want him to have the foundation being the really positive, really good stuff that, encourages good values. And then from there, you can kind of say, okay, we'll poke into the kind of, more opposition world. And I think it's the opposite for most Christians. And that's really, I don't think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with you, because that is certainly a problem in evangelical circles, especially, is that we want to make Christianity so easy. And and this was one of the things that I did when I was a youth pastor, is I would talk and I would tell my students, listen, it's not going to be incredibly easy. I mean, there will be times when it will be easy, and those will be joyous times, but you will face trials, you will face temptations. And one of the things that, I tried to do as a youth pastor was I tried to arm them. So I did classes where I talked about science, and these are some of the pushbacks from atheists you're going to get. This is some of the comebacks you're going to get from people who have left the faith. And so you need to be prepared, be ready season in and out of season. And I think I quoted that scripture wrong, but my point is, I think that
time for that.
Yeah. I think but my point is, yeah, you're right. We try so hard to make it so easy, but Islam is winning converts by telling people conquer and die, and if you die a horrific death, that's even better. And so, and they're winning converts by this.
That is so funny you say that. This is where I think that we very much, this is why I think we can super get along, even with our different kind of theology. We both have that same drive. I know we have some disagreements, but it's not because you are just like, oh, well, being Catholic's too hard. Like, it's not like that you don't agree that my view is correct. It's not that because I get that argument from people, right? But they're just like, oh, well, that's just too difficult. I'll just worship God in my own way, or, the kind of arguments people say, or, oh, well, I'm a Christian, but I'm not going to kind of follow these kind of moral teachings. Because I have the exact same problem with a lot of kind of more liberal kind of Catholics, right? Because they do the same thing. They think, oh, well, the church is going to be strong as long as we make it super easy for people. And, what I try and think of is, for me, when because for anyone watching this who doesn't know, I became a Catholic, but I also had pretty much completely left the Christian faith at the time. So it was a kind of a conversion just to Christianity. I just consider myself converting to Christianity, and obviously,
yeah, absolutely,
Catholic, right? But so it's kind of that big thing. But I remember just really thinking to myself, like when I joined my church and was received in the church, like I had a deep commitment, and when I started walking around wearing a cross every day and just saying amen, like, what this really means is you have to go back to the earliest days of Christianity. Like, what it meant in the early days of Christianity was, I am willing to die for this.
Right.
Right. That's what you have to, that's the attitude. And if you foster that attitude, it's going to make it a lot easier to be like, I am going to boldly defend Christ when someone is mocking someone's faith. I'm going to boldly defend the good when someone is doing something evil. And if you start from that point, and I don't think we do that. I don't really think that a lot of us, and obviously I need to improve. I'm not saying that if I was called to martyrdom tomorrow that I might, not fail at it, but that is like, I pray to be able to have that strength, right? Because that is fundamentally what we're called, like what all Christians are called to do. And I think we've really lost that.
I agree. Well, and like you said, it's like, that's one reason why I make it a habit for my writings in the Daily Wire. I always write about Christians across denominations who are suffering because the modern American church, we've become complacent. We just have, and we're too afraid to talk about sin because we don't want to alienate people. But the fact is, I think that, and I also think this comes down to the false humility. That's why when people, it's all people, we're going to share this, that, and the other. We're going to turn to this celebrity. It's because we're spoiled. And that's not to say, like, for instance, Ashton Kutcher has an organization that rescues girls from sex trafficking. Of course, I'm going to support that. That's fantastic. That's
great.
Yes. And Gary Sinise, he has an organization that helps veterans get housing. That's fantastic. I'm going to support that. But I'm not going to, every time Gary Sinise, who, by the way, Gary Sinise, if you come across this video, I love you. Send me an autograph. But but I'm not going to cling to every single one of his words like it's just solid truth unless I know it to be truth. And I think that's somewhere along the way the American church lost this. And like you said, I think it's just because we've pretty much become spoiled to it.
And I've seen you do that, and I've actually said very similar things about kind of Christian persecution, because I think if you have that in your head, if we can't withstand the culture in even the tiniest ways, and a lot of us, the sacrifices we're asked to make are very small. Right. I made the sacrifice of, really having my mom and sisters really not get my faith. A lot of my friends really don't get it. I lose followers on Twitter, like that kind of stuff. Like those are like very small sacrifices to make. I am so blessed that I live in a place where I'm free to practice my faith. I am, free and safe to not only practice my faith, but to speak about my faith and have conversations with people. And there are people in the world who are not. And I think this is also another thing where people not kind of having a great education on what Christianity is can get really lost. Like you would look at, like, for example, in the Middle East, we have like Coptic Christians are a huge, big group that face a lot of struggle. And I think we've really, like, a lot of people in like America and Canada, like our view of like what Christians look like, what they do, it's very like, it's our culture. Like we're just looking at it from our culture. So I think there's this weird disconnect. And I remember this specifically, and that kind of touched my heart thinking that, because remember last year there was that bombing on Palm Sunday in Egypt. And I just like, because for me, I was raised in the Greek Orthodox Church, and seeing the way that those people worship is very similar to the Coptic Church. And because, oh, sorry, my phone's ringing.
That's fine.
So a lot of people would, people were tweeting it and stuff, but to me it was so personal because it wasn't this like foreign weird religion. Like it wasn't like seeing like these Hindus in a temple, and I'm not downplaying it. Obviously it's horrible if people are ever blown up for their faith, is just evil. Right. But you know what I mean? Like, I think that for me, I had this personal view because I remember just seeing that kind of style and those little palm crosses. And even this year, it just broke my heart. Like, it was so personal to me. Like, wow, that could literally be the people at my dad's church that I grew up with. And we need to have that. And we need to all be able to, like, look and have love for other people and not be so selfish with how we view, like, well, my Christianity is, hanging out on Facebook, listening to Christian music, like we need to be like understanding that there are people in the world who do not have the blessings that we have.
Absolutely. And this has been a really great conversation. Stefanie, I really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Steph M. Nicholas, not Stephanie McWilliams. And I have a new personal website, so I have all my social media, and you can check out like my conversion story and things like that. And that is at stephnicholas.com.
That's fantastic. And you can find me on Twitter at RealJakeAiry, probably discussing something with Stefanie. My Instagram is real.jacob. My Instagram is real.jacob.airy. My Facebook is author Jacob Airy. My blog is jacobairy.blog, and there I've got movie reviews, music reviews, all kinds of stuff, some other interviews. And be sure to check out my political writings at thedailywire.com. I'm a staff writer there and also a social media coordinator. So, Stefanie, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a great time.